Hi there. We're going to talk about another in the crossover series of books that have become movies, and it concerns Operation Mincemeat. Now, the background to this was the need for strategic deception during World War II to cloak the actual invasion moves that were being made in various parts of the world. In this particular case, it was in the Mediterranean area. And there was a whole section in London called the London Controlling Section, which was highly secret, who devised these plans. And they were massive. They involved signal intelligence, they involved planting rumors, they involved having false ships and armored vehicles made out of rubber and things like that, aircraft and so on, all to deceive as to the actual target. And in this case, the target was Sicily, which was really obvious. It was obvious that the Allies needed to invade Sicily and work their way up Italy. So the plan was to have the Germans think that the actual invasion was going to be either Sardinia or Greece, and draw their attention away from Sicily. No easy task. So uh, the plan evolved really in the minds of several um, guys in the intelligence world who had been novelists, thriller writers. Uh, Primary amongst them was, well, he became a thriller writer, was Ian Fleming. Had the kind of mind who was always coming up with these kind of plots. And together, there was a germ of an idea, but the two main proponents of it were Ewan Montague and Charles Chumley. Now, Ewan Montague was a member of a very, very wealthy Jewish family who had made a lot of money in the banking sphere, and so they were descendants of some titled figures in the British establishment. And he lived a very wealthy life. Uh, he married and he had two children, and he was a barrister, a very prominent barrister, a very good mind. And being from a prominent Jewish family, they knew they'd be targets if the Nazis invaded. So he sent his wife and his two children off to the United States for safety. And he missed them terribly, and he wrote to them every day. He wrote to his wife every day. So and he joined the Royal Navy Reserve and went into intelligence. Uh, the other chap, Charles Chumley, um, was another character, and he had loads of hobbies, including the breeding habit of insects. He joined the RAF hoping to be a pilot, but his eyesight let him down. So he went into intelligence and actually became a member of MI5. And they worked together, generally quite cordially, and put together this plan. So the book uh, about the operation, which was called Operation Mincemeat, um, which written a couple of years ago, fairly recently, by Ben McIntyre, who specialises in books on espionage and special forces. He's a very good writer, and he always enthralls the reader. I've read, I think, all of his books. So he had access to Ewan Montague's private files. He had kept a lot of the actual wartime documents, and also to the official archives, which had been released over the years, uh, and quite a number of interviews as well. So he lays out the whole story. And in a nutshell, the idea was to float a body ashore in Spain, uh, carrying documents and plans which would give very, very strong hints that the planned invasion was going to be Sardinia and or Greece. and ensure that these fell into the hands of enemy intelligence. So, a very, very complex plan. And complex operations are the ones that usually fail. Simple is good. However, it had to be complex because there's so many moving parts, and it all happened at wartime. Getting a dead body, that was the first thing, and they went to Sir Bernard Spilsbury, who was the famous pathologist, who, and the book makes this clear, was kind of losing his faculties, and he was giving evidence in murder cases and having people convicted who were hung, executed, uh, on quite flimsy evidence. But he had such a reputation that his word carried a lot of weight, and he was making a lot of mistakes. And together with the coroner of London, Bentley Purchase, they identified a chap from Wales, Glendower Michael, who had killed himself by ingesting rat poison. So they put the body into cold storage and started devising a cover identity for him, and they made him Major Martin of the Royal Marines. And he was going to be flying to meet senior officers in the Mediterranean and brief them. And he was an expert on landing craft, supposedly. So they had this whole family. He had a bank, he had a tailor, he had a club, and they gave him a girlfriend, one of the secretaries, who they called Pam, and she furnished a photograph for him to carry in his wallet. And so they assembled the documents, and they took the body to Scotland, to Holyloch, and thence by submarine HMS Seraph off to the coast of Spain. And in total secrecy, only officers were allowed to see it. None of the crew floated the body into the water, and it ended up in Spain. Now, the machinations to get the documents into the hand of the Abwehr, the German intelligence, were very, very much a spy story. And the characters are amazing. Our man in the area, Alan Hilgarth, he was the son of a Harley Street surgeon, and during the First World War he joined the Navy, and at the age of 17, his first job during the Battle of Jutland was to assist the ship's surgeon by throwing severed limbs overboard. Then he, amongst other things, he joined an expedition to Bolivia to find some gold that had been hidden there. And this was, they had to carry huge mining equipment loads into the jungle, into the most remote area, mountainous jungle, infested with snakes and all sorts of creepy crawlies. And it was a totally miserable experience for all, except for Alan Hilgoth, who actually enjoyed it and wore a tie every day. And when he came back, he became the consul in the area, and also was a member of SIS, the Secret Intelligence Service. He was a good friend of Churchill before the war and right up until his death. Excuse me. And the book is littered with similarly amazing characters. Excuse me. And on the other side, on the German side, was a chap called Adolf Klaus. And during the First World War, he had attempted a sabotage operation against the British, the Royal Navy, using a rubber dinghy loaded with explosives, but it sunk. And he was captured by the Spaniards, but then repatriated to Germany, where he went into the intelligence side and was their man, their equivalent in the area. So these two chaps are each trying to fulfill their own ends, and the Spanish Navy was actually actually very honourable. They wanted to pass the recovered documents. They were in a briefcase chained to the corpse's wrist, um, straight to the British authorities. But obviously, the British didn't want that. They wanted an opportunity for German skullduggery. So there was a lot of diplomatic niceties, uh, and finally, the Germans got their hand on the documents. And when they were finally sent back to London, passed through the chain back to London, they they had photographed the documents and microscopically examined them before the op began, and they were able to compare, and they were able to guarantee that these documents had been opened and been read. But also, Bletchley Park was monitoring the German communications and was also able to verify that the information had made its way up the pipeline to Hitler. Now, um, it's in the nature of intelligence services uh, to, when they gain information, to really be mesmerized by it. And they should really be very cynical, but they're usually not. And the Abwehr was no exception. And there was one or two dissenting voices, but they were overruled. And Hitler straight away said, is this real? But was persuaded that it was and made plans accordingly. And in the event, the invasion of Sicily was a success. German divisions had been moved elsewhere. The loss of life was minimal, and the invasion was a lot quicker than had been predicted. However, it didn't go perfectly, and this was due to Allied rivalry between the British and the Americans, and also some bungling. Dozens of gliders um, were lost into the sea instead of hitting the land. It was some of the loss of life was totally nothing to do with the Germans, really. It was our own blundering, which is terrible. One of the things that only came out later was that due to Sicily, uh, which was called Husky, Operation Husky, Hitler focused his attention on the area. And right at the time when the biggest tank battle in history at Kursk was happening, the Germans had made slow progress. Well, they'd actually had been repulsed, but were counterattacking as the Germans always did, and were about to make a breakthrough right at the time when Hitler ordered the SS Panzer Corps to be withdrawn and sent to the Mediterranean. And so they lost at Kursk, and that really was the start of the end of the war in the east. From then on, um, the, uh, the Red Army uh, really didn't suffer any major setbacks after that. Whether you think that's a good thing or not, in the end, obviously, the Nazis were the worst of the two evils, but the Soviets were a very close second. Okay, so after the war, Ewan Montagu had retained a lot of the documentation, and he thought it might be a good idea to write a book. And the British authorities, as they always do, said no. But then a journalist got hold of the story, Ian Colvin, and he was going to serialize it. So the authorities changed their mind, gave Ewan Montagu the go ahead, and he rushed the book into publication. Um, Now, it was a massive success because it's such an amazing story. It is the stuff of spy fiction, really. But there was a lot left out. Charles Chumley didn't want himself to be included. His career in MI5 really precluded that, and he was not a seeker of publicity by any means. So his side of the story wasn't told. So it became more of a one-man band. Uh, Obviously, no reference to the Bletchley Park and the Enigma, the Ultra Secrets, or to the double cross system, where we play back all the German spies, uh, and also the identity of Major Martin. Um, they completely wrong-footed the reader and said that it was uh, a son of a service family who kind of volunteered his services. It was very quickly then made into a film, a highly successful film. And the star, Clifton Webb, actually an American playing Ewan Montague. And he had access to Ewan Montague to play the part because Ewan Montague had a small role in the film. And Charles Chumley actually did provide some technical advice, but he insisted he was uncredited to do so. Really good film, and it's one of the classic war movies, and it 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 was a really great success. Then, as a result of the book I've been talking about, Operation Mincemeat by Ben McIntyre, they decided to very recently, in fact this year, release another film, and they called it Operation Mincemeat, starring Colin Firth. And this time, Charles Chumley's role was completely recognised, and he was played by Matthew McFadden. Uh, Probably got the character to a T from reading the book, and they actually put a bit more tension between the two than was really true. Some characters were merged. Um, the character of John Godfrey and the character of Masterman were kind of merged together. Um, some silliness was in there. There's a thing where a German spy confronts the the girl who was Pam uh, and threatens her with violence. That never happened. And the sister of Glendower Michael, the actual Major Martin, turns up and wants to know what happened to him. He had no relatives, so that was completely phony. Also, there's a homosexual scene which never happened. It's total fiction uh, out in Spain. So it's typical movies. However, overall, it's a good film. I really enjoyed it. Um, it's difficult for current movie makers to get the mood right of something that happened well before their time. They got no actual experience of it. But I think on the whole, they got it as well as you can expect. And altogether, if you read Ewan Montague's book, if you watch The Man Who Never Was film, if you read Ben McIntyre's book, and if you watch Operation Mincemeat movie, you will enjoy any of them or all of them. And it's a tale that's certainly worth telling, and is really one of the classics of World War II. And just as a final point, the eminent historian Hugh Trevor Roper said it was the most effective deception operation of the war.